Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today we're diving into a seriously fascinating piece of source text called The Solar Path of Self and Sovereign Identity. If you follow astrological frameworks at all, you know that the psychological mapping of a first house sun placement is just absolutely captivating. So we're going to explore exactly how this specific placement literally shapes a person's entire life trajectory. Let's get right into it.
To kick things off, the text poses this really deep implicit question that I want you to hold in your mind as we go through this. What is the ultimate journey of the self? Because, the source material doesn't just give us some static, boring list of personality traits. No, it outlines what's basically a hero's journey. It's this massive, profound evolution from raw, unfiltered instinct all the way to mature, conscious leadership.
Section 1. The Center of Experience. Okay, so our core thesis today is how this placement puts the ego at the absolute center of life. To really wrap our heads around this, we first need to anchor ourselves in what the first house actually is. It represents personality, your physical presence, your base instincts, and just how you engage with the world on a daily basis. But when you drop the sun into this equation, wow, it acts like this massive gravitational force, just pulling all life experiences right toward those exact traits and amplifying that physical presence to the absolute highest degree. The source distills this baseline identity down into three really strong pillars: individuality, visibility, and personal authority. If you take away anything from this early on, know that these three elements form an unbreakable foundation. Basically, life for this individual becomes this relentless, non-stop journey of defining and refining these exact pillars.
Section 2. Projecting Power and Vitality.
So how does this foundation actually translate out into the real world? Well, the text draws a really fascinating direct link between a person's physical energy and their need to feel purposeful. It explicitly notes that they have strong physical energy and vitality when purposeful and self-directed. Their vitality isn't just some random thing. It's fueled 100% by autonomy. If they lose that driving purpose, they quite literally lose that boundless energy. It's like unplugging a battery. Building on that incredible energy, the individual will consistently project confidence, a very strong presence, individuality, and a massive drive for initiative in decision-making. The absolute crucial point to grasp here is their intense desire to influence outcomes. They just aren't wired to sit back and follow the crowd. They possess this intrinsic, burning need to shape their environment and take the lead literally the second they walk into a room. Section 3. The Natural-Born Leader. Now, because of that immense drive to take the lead, their personal identity becomes closely tied to achievement, recognition, and self-reliance. Their sense of self isn't actually separate from what they do. It's completely enmeshed with being seen by others as highly capable. Their ego literally feeds on that recognition. And this brilliantly illustrates where that drive naturally deposits them in the professional world. The text explicitly points to areas of success, like leadership roles, entrepreneurship, and public-facing roles. Think of the ambitious startup founder or super dynamic public speaker. Any field that requires a massive personal presence is exactly where they're going to thrive, simply because the environment demands the exact kind of authority they naturally possess. Section 4. Ego clashes and pride. But as you might guess, it's not all smooth sailing. As we enter the shadow side of burning quite so bright, the text forces us to ask a really tough question. What happens when the ego takes total control? Because when individuality is so paramount to a person's very existence, several really intense internal and external conflicts are inevitably going to pop up. One of the primary internal conflicts highlighted here is defensiveness. Because their intense need for self-expression is so absolute, criticism feels incredibly personal. Their work is so closely tied to their core identity that any critique, even constructive stuff, is immediately processed as a direct attack on who they are. This makes taking honest, direct feedback absolutely brutal for them to stomach. And naturally, this internal friction doesn't just stay neatly tucked away inside. It totally spills out into the external world. The text points directly to relationship challenges, specifically ego clashes, and a profound difficulty yielding control in shared decisions. For them, yielding control feels almost like giving up a piece of their sovereign identity, which, as you can imagine, turns simple everyday compromises into massive power struggles. Section 5. The Ultimate Leadership Lesson. So how in the world is this conflict actually resolved? We're faced with a vital dichotomy here. self-focus on one side versus cooperation on the other. The text explains that life experiences will constantly, repeatedly, push this person to find a middle ground. The universe basically demands that they learn to maintain their strong self-focus while genuinely developing an awareness of other people. It's not optional, it's a mandatory balancing act.
To that end, the source outlines this truly beautiful maturation process over time. It starts with simply directing others, that raw, unfiltered expression of authority. But as they hit those painful ego clashes we just talked about, they're forced to evolve into the middle stage, adapting, where they learn to actively listen and actually cooperate. Finally, through deep, lived experience, they reach the highest evolution of their journey, surrendering.
And that brings us to this incredibly powerful quote from the source text. True leadership is about mastering the ability to listen, adapt, and sometimes surrender without losing identity. That right there is the ultimate resolution. They learn to step back and let others shine without diminishing their own sovereign self. So I'll leave you with this provocative thought to chew on. How do you balance true, authentic authority with the humility it takes to surrender? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep learning.